The developer's lawyer called early Monday morning. His first words were simple. "We have a problem." He had built shopping centers, subdivisions, and commercial parks for 14 years. He was not the kind of man who panicked, but he was panicking now. The entire $30 million project is blocked. Blocked by what? A strip of land. 12 feet wide, half a mile long. Silence. Who owns it? A farmer. How much does he want? He hasn't called back. Then came the part nobody could believe. The farmer had bought that land in 2001 for $8,000. $30 million was now sitting still because of 12 feet of land, and one man who had waited 23 years for this call. His name was Gerald Marsh, and it all began at a bank auction almost nobody attended. March 2001, Callaway County Bank. A folding table served as an auction desk. 4 locals stood near the coffee pot just to watch. The bank was clearing out foreclosed land. Then the auctioneer read the next listing. Parcel 7C, 12 feet wide, half a mile long. Opening bid, $5,000. Nobody moved. He smirked. $5,000 for half a mile of grass. Anybody? A hand rose in the back. Clean shirt, work boots, 62 years old. Gerald Marsh. $5,000 to the gentleman in the back. A voice near the coffee pot spoke up. 6. The auctioneer nodded. 6,000. Looking for 7. Gerald never looked up. 8. The room turned. Before the hammer fell, branch manager Curtis Wade laughed loud enough for the room to hear. $8,000 for a 12-foot strip of nothing. He looked straight at Gerald. Some people collect problems. A few people laughed with him. Gerald never looked up. He signed the paper, folded the receipt, and placed it in his coat pocket. Because unlike everyone else in that room, he knew exactly what he had just bought. To understand why Gerald Marsh paid $8,000 for a 12-foot strip of land, you have to go back to 1999. Not to a bank, not to a courtroom, to the Callaway County Public Library. Gerald had a habit most people never understood. Once a month he drove to the library and read county records no one else cared about. Old zoning maps, road surveys, easement filings, infrastructure plans from decades earlier. His wife Margaret called it homework. Gerald called it paying attention. Then one October evening in 1999, he found something that made him stop turning pages. A county road expansion proposal from 1956. State Route 9 was supposed to be widened. To do it, the county had surveyed a narrow 12-foot corridor along the eastern boundary. The expansion was canceled in 1961. But one detail had never been cleaned up. The corridor was never legally dissolved. It still existed on county records as a separate parcel of land. Forgotten, unclaimed, still alive on paper. Gerald read the filing 3 times. That night, he sat at the kitchen table and drew a map by hand. Route 9, the corridor, the land around it. On one side sat scattered farmland. On the other side, hundreds of acres of flat, open ground. Cheap land. Empty land. The kind of land developers notice before anyone else does. Gerald stared at the map for a long time. Then he called his neighbor, Dale. "You remember that open land east of Route 9? "Sure," Dale said. "Nothing out there." Gerald paused. "Not yet." For the next 18 months, Gerald watched. Quietly. Patiently. Every trip into town, he drove past that land. He noticed survey flags, fresh tire tracks, new fence stakes. Then, in early 2000, a survey crew appeared. 2 trucks. 2 full days. They said nothing. 3 months later, 40 acres were sold through an LLC with a Nashville address. 6 months after that, another 60 acres changed hands. Then more. Gerald wrote every purchase down in a notebook Margaret had given him. One night she asked what he was tracking. "A pattern," he said. "What kind of pattern?" "The kind that takes time to see." By the summer of 2001, nearly 280 acres had been quietly assembled by one company. Gerald traced the LLC back to a developer called Meridian Land Group. Then he confirmed the part that mattered most. The land had no usable road access, wetlands to the south, private property to the west, no practical entrance from the north. The only legal path in or out ran along the eastern edge of Route 9, straight through the 12-foot corridor, the same corridor the bank was about to auction. Opening bid, $5,000. Gerald did the math. The developer had already spent millions buying the land. and they still did not own the one piece they needed most. So Gerald set his limit at $8,000, just to make sure he got there first. Gerald drove home from the auction with the deed in his shirt pocket. Margaret was waiting at the kitchen table. "Did you get it?" "We got it." "And now what?" Gerald thought for a moment. "Now we wait." Margaret had known him for 38 years. She knew when he was guessing, and when he was certain. This was certainty. "How long?" she asked. "However long it takes." She nodded once, stood up, and put the kettle on. They barely spoke about that land again for years. Gerald maintained the strip the way he maintained everything he owned. Carefully, quietly, without attention. He mowed it twice a year, paid the taxes every year, $47, always on time. He kept the markers clear. To everyone else, it was 12 feet of grass beside Route 9. Now to Gerald, it was unfinished business. Then came the first offer. In 2008, a real estate agent from Nashville knocked on his door. Young, polished. He offered $80,000 for parcel 7C, 10 times what Gerald had paid. Most people would have signed. Gerald smiled politely. "Not interested." The agent said the number could go higher. "I'm sure it can," Gerald said. Then he closed the door. Margaret had heard everything. $80,000? Gerald nodded. "That's a lot of money." "It is." "And you still said no?" "I did." She looked at him for a moment, then went back to the kitchen. She never asked again. Years passed. Then the county called. They offered $120,000. Gerald thanked them, then declined. "Can I ask why?" the commissioner said. "Because it isn't time yet." Time for what? Gerald never answered. Then, in 2016, Meridian Land Group finally came themselves. Not an agent, a lawyer. Three-piece suit, leather briefcase. He offered $250,000. Gerald invited him in, poured coffee, listened carefully, then looked at him over the cup. "Tell your client I've been patient, too." "Longer than he has." The lawyer left with the same briefcase he arrived with. Gerald opened his notebook, wrote down the date, the offer, and 3 words. Not yet. Wait. Between 2001 and 2024, Gerald turned down offer after offer. Not because he was stubborn, not because he was rich, because he understood something nobody else did. The strip was never worth what they offered. It was worth what they needed. And in 2024, they finally needed it. In the spring of 2024, Meridian Land Group filed for final approval. 340 acres east of Route 9, retail, housing, a project nearly 10 years in the making. Most people in town saw progress. Gerald saw paperwork. He drove to the county planning office and asked for the permit file. The clerk handed him a thick stack of pages. Gerald wanted only one page, page 31, the site access plan, road width, traffic flow, entrance points. And there it was. The main access road to the entire project ran along the eastern edge of Route 9, straight through parcel 7C, 12 feet wide, half a mile long, Gerald's land. He folded the papers and drove home. That evening, he called his daughter Sandra. Sandra was 41, a property lawyer in Knoxville, sharp-minded, calm under pressure. "Dad, what is it?" "I need you to look at something." "What kind of something?" "A permit application." There was a pause. "Parcel 7C?" Gerald smiled. "You remembered." "You showed it to me when I was 12, she said. "You said someday it would matter." Gerald looked out the window. "Someday is here." Sandra drove down that weekend. She spread the permit file across the kitchen table. Next to it sat the original deed from 2001. Beside that, Gerald's notebook, 23 years of dates, offers, names, amounts. She read in silence, then looked up. "Dad, their entire access road runs through your land." "I know. They can't build without it." "I know. Do they know you own it?" Gerald leaned back in his chair. "They're about to." 3 weeks later, Meridian hit its first obstacle. County planning flagged the entrance road. Proof of legal access was required before approval. Meridian assumed it was routine. Their lawyers began tracing parcel 7C. It took 4 days. 4 days to learn what Gerald had known for 23 years. The call came Thursday morning. Gerald was drinking coffee when the phone rang. Unknown Nashville number. He let it ring once, twice, then answered, "Mr. Marsh, my name is Robert Hale. I represent Meridian Land Group. I'd like to discuss purchasing your parcel." Gerald said nothing. "We're prepared to offer $400,000. Cash. Close within 30 days. Gerald set down his cup. $400,000. For land he bought for $8,000. He finally spoke. "I appreciate the call." Hale sounded relieved. "So you'll consider it?" Gerald stayed calm. "It means I appreciate the call." Then he hung up. He called Sandra immediately. "They offered $400,000. What did you say?" "I hung up." Sandra was quiet for a moment. Then she asked one question. "What do you want?" Gerald looked across the field toward the strip he had mowed for 23 years. "I don't want to sell it." "Then what do you want?" "I want what it's worth. Not what they're offering. What it's worth to them." Sandra took a slow breath. "Then I need to make a phone call." And Meridian Land Group was about to learn the difference between price and value. Sandra Marsh had practiced property law for 16 years. She called Robert Hale the next morning. "I represent Gerald Marsh regarding Parcel 7C. Hale sounded confident. $400,000 is a generous offer." Sandra stayed calm. "Then open your permit file. Page 31. Your client's only access road runs through my father's land. That parcel is worth what you need it for. My father will not sell." Hale sighed. "Everyone has a price." "He wants terms," Sandra said. "What terms?" "A permanent easement. $4,500 a month. Adjusted for inflation. Transferable to his heirs." Silence. Meridian disappeared for 11 days. Then Hale called back. $3,000 a month, 10-year term. Sandra called Gerald. He listened, then said 3 words. "Tell him no." She called Hale back. $4,500, permanent, final. 2 weeks later, Meridian filed a legal challenge. They claimed Parcel 7C had been abandoned years ago. Sandra spread county tax records across her desk. Every year from 1961 to 2024, Parcel 7C had been taxed as separate land. 63 straight years. She looked at Gerald. They taxed it. They recognized it. They just destroyed their own case. Gerald reached into his jacket pocket, placed one folded paper on the desk. The original 1961 county resolution. Sandra stared at him. "You kept this?" Gerald nodded. "Since 1999. 23 years. He had been carrying the answer the whole time, and now Meridian would have to face it. The hearing was short. Meridian's lawyer argued abandonment. Sandra placed 3 documents on the table: the 1956 easement filing, the 1961 county resolution, and 63 years of tax records showing Parcel 7C as separate land. Then she said only one thing. "You cannot abandon something the county has taxed for 63 years." The judge reviewed the records, then looked at Meridian's lawyer. "Do you dispute these assessments?" He hesitated. "No, Your Honor." The judge nodded. "Then Parcel 7C remains valid. The claim is denied. Case closed." Meridian called Sandra that same afternoon. Robert Hale sounded different now, less confident, more urgent. "Our client will accept your father's terms." Sandra stayed calm. $4,500 a month. Permanent easement. Adjusted for inflation. Transferable to his heirs. "Yes," Hale said. "We agree." Sandra called Gerald. They accepted. He was quiet for a moment. "Every term?" "Every term." Another pause. Then Gerald said 2 words. 47. "What?" "My yearly taxes. $47 a year, for 23 years, now worth $54,000 every year." 3 weeks later, the agreement was signed. Gerald filed it himself at the county clerk's office. Then he returned to his truck, opened the old notebook Margaret had given him years earlier. He turned to the final page, and wrote 1 line. April 2024. Done. Curtis Wade, the bank manager who laughed in 2001, read about the agreement in the local paper. He did not laugh this time. Gerald never knew, and never would have cared. Gerald Marsh paid $8,000 for 12 feet of grass. 23 years later. It paid him back every single month, for the rest of his life. He never bragged, never called the bank, never needed to. Some men collect problems. Gerald collected patience. If you respect men who think ahead, stay quiet, and win in the end. Subscribe now, and tell me in the comments, Would you have taken the 400,000 or waited for the monthly deal? I'll see you next story.